Thank you, Brett Morgan, for joining us today for our inaugural event, the Be on the Road, all about family and legacy today. So glad you and your dad joined us. I am hoping that what you can do is give us a little bit of a background on you, which a lot of people already know, but maybe more of the specifics that you shared today, and then maybe some key takeaways that dealers that weren't able to attend today can take home with them.
Sure. So wonderful to be here. Brett Morgan, CEO of the Morgan Automotive Group. We have 66 retail stores. We are HQ'd in Tampa. All of our retail is in Florida. So I, came into the business at the same time as my father, so I don't consider myself a generational, or didn't early in my career, though certainly I am. My father had kind of two entrepreneurial lives separate from the automotive world before we came into the car business. He was in the independent tire and auto service business, which has certainly served us well on the fixed ops side of our business. And it's just been an absolute whirlwind of an experience. We, started with one store in late 2004, a Toyota store in Tampa, which we naturally still have. And we grew at a pace of about a rooftop a year for about 11 to 12, 13 years. And, then we, got some investment capital in our business from a separate equity partner, something we never considered. Somebody took us to lunch, introduced us to some guys from Blackstone. And, that was a great experience. We ended up not transacting with them, not doing business with them, but that was a great education. They just, different world, more of a committee approach, something we would have just not been really accustomed to. Really, incredibly bright people. And instead, we got involved with a PE firm from Rye, New York, a smaller boutique firm called Greenbrier. And we deployed all their capital very quickly and learned that we were really good at acquiring car dealerships, sourcing. It's funny, each of them has its own story. And, Dad's a great, incredible relationship builder, and I've tried to be as well. And then, frankly, after that, and kind of deployed all their capital and found another partner to take them out and to invest more and to help us additionally. And as far as sourcing capital, and that has been Redwood, which is a family capital office out of Maryland. And in about 5-6 years, we've acquired, I don't have the spreadsheet here in front of me, but 30 plus rooftops in a short amount of time.
Of which
moving
was
at about a clip of about 6-7 a year, which is it's been a wild ride.
a big one in Coconut Creek.
Yeah, something about Alan likes to talk about that one. Al Hendrickson, Toyota. He's got a certain statistic he thinks it's important for the world to know about that one that he talks about quite a lot. But yeah, and it kind of felt like a little bit of the world coming full circle, being that we started in a Toyota store, specifically a Southeast Toyota store, a little different flavor of Toyota. And one that we think a lot of. And, Al Hendrickson at the time was, maybe the number 1, number 2 volume, player in the United States. So they had built an exceptional business in Coconut Creek. We've been trying to do more in South Florida. There's several markets in Florida that we'd like to, I think, do more in. We have a lot in Tampa. We've done pretty well in kind of going up 75, Ocala, Gainesville, Lake City, over to Jacksonville. 95 corridor. We'd like to do more in Orlando, but South Florida is a really exciting car market.
And part of the panel today, your dad was talking about the specificity of staying in Florida. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I think it's written that the state of Florida has more franchise laws on the books than any other state in the United States, and most of them are very pro-dealer. So that's kind of needs to be proliferated and put out there. Also, it's been a very business state for a long period of time, from a political perspective, that it's a state that people want to live in. So people are consistently coming here and moving here, and we all know in the United States there were winners and losers during COVID, and Florida was a big winner. So we've kind of had those tailwinds, behind us, being that all of our businesses are in Florida. There's still other great states to do business in, but people do seem to have targeted kind of the Southeast. Even a lot of, dealer friends that I have and know, in other parts of the country, like the idea of having an operation in the Southeast or Florida. Good throughput, not typically over dealered markets. So, yeah, Florida's a great place to live, work, and play.
You mentioned you started with Toyota and just purchased a Toyota store, kind of brought it full circle. How have you seen that brand change since you've entered the business? And how do you see it evolving in terms of its desirability?
Yeah, I think, Toyota obviously, big part of their DNA is, that kind of Kaizen approach, that continuous improvement, what they brought from a manufacturing standard of just building a quality product, being able to get it to the market for less. And now they just compete in like so many different segments. I think they've got 18, 19 different models. And they just do an exceptional job. It was fascinating to me. You look at the statistics that at one point, I think they were the lowest day supply of certainly of any import, maybe of all manufacturers in the United States, yet they were still number one on customer shopping lists. So they were getting enough to market, but it just goes to show you that the product's so desirable. They're getting a little slack for maybe not, partaking in the EV world or being as progressive on EVs as other brands like Hyundai, Kia, and maybe even like Nissan have been in the import world. But, some of those models are kind of stocking up on our lots. So I think Toyota's wait and see approach will benefit them in the long run. Would like to, remind people, just like Toyota reminds us, they were, with the Prius and a lot of their hybrid models, they were really some of the first in the partial zero emissions game to really create vehicles that had, great throughput. So, feel good about our Toyota business today and moving forward.
That's awesome. On the panel today, you guys talked a lot about family succession. We had the Jeff Weiler family there. We had you and your dad. We had Joe Laham, Nick Laham, and his brother Chris. And a lot of what was discussed between the generations was the importance of family and not just working, I guess, better yet, not working for your dad, but working with your dad. And you and your dad weren't the only ones to say that. All three panelists said the same thing. Can you expand on that just a little bit and talk about, as you second gen and as your daughter comes up, I know she's younger, but as she comes up, because another second piece of this is if your kids want to come into the business, if they don't want to come into the business, how is it different for them than it was for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. So let's go all the way back to like 1997. I'm graduating from high school, and I can remember my dad was in the independent tire and auto service space with Tires Plus was his business at that time. And there was an expectation that I would just get in the business. I'd spent several years doing several different, summer jobs in the business. And I can remember I probably said it to my dad, like, well, then why am I going to college? Like, why am I going to get a liberal arts education if what I really need to know is this? And that wasn't a slide. It just felt like, hey, if this is the trajectory, then why am I even doing this? The reality was 2 years later, he sold that business. His incremental deal didn't need to be announced until I think Bridgestone passed the 50% threshold of ownership. But that took a lot of pressure off me. And so on one hand, I kind of feel blessed to have led that existence, that when Dad did get into the automotive dealership space, I 100% felt it was on my own accord. I was older. I'd, gone and worked for a large corporate entity. I'd lived, gotten to do some things. And yeah, I don't think everyone on that panel had lived that same existence. So I'm empathetic to that. I don't know if there's, any real silver bullet on how to handle that idea of, succession, in the context of the automotive dealership business. I just think, like a lot of things, there's just better ways to talk about it. And, for me, just having a lot of honesty and self-awareness. My dad's a very humble guy, and having that humble leadership example in my life's been very powerful. It's very powerful inside of our business. But, I think it takes a lot of self-honesty on both sides for that dynamic to work, because you have to be honest about what your skill sets are and what you're good at and what maybe you're not good at, and how you can add value to the business, and how maybe somebody else should be adding value to the business in this regards. And I think in part for us, succession turned into a conversation about growth, which was very exciting. And growth perpetuates a whole new kind of, dynamic. And I'm happy to drill into our story, but, I feel very fortunate on many levels, to have had the opportunities I've had and, have them come when they have.
Jeff Weiler said something kind of that hit me from the succession panel perspective in talking about, and I just want to get your perspective on this a little bit from you and your dad and what you've been through in business. He made a kind of a profound statement that all of his successes, his father is celebrated. It's everybody thinks the perception, the reality of the perception is that everybody believes that the reason he is so successful is because of his father, but all of his failures are his own. And I don't know how that might have hit you, given that you're in the family business second gen as well and living in your dad's, I don't want to say proverbial shadow because you guys have been in it together since day one.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of share maybe the same sentiment, but say it a little differently. All of our successes are our teams. So it's not about necessarily Dad and I. There's only one store that bears the Morgan name, and that's very purposely. And trust me, we tried to call it something else, but the manufacturer had problems with our other naming conventions. No, I would absolutely say the same thing, but I would replace the him and I with just the team. The success is about our team. We have a lot of extremely talented people at Morgan who both work obviously inside the stores and at the dealership level, but also at now the management company level. With 66 stores, you're really an orchestrator if you're anything. And trying to orchestrate that, same store improvement or, that, launch into pro forma as quickly as possible in an acquisition. It's really a lot about, leadership and communication and, just understanding where you are in the business versus where you could be. And, I've learned, again, it's funny. I had these like childhood memories of going on, whether it's visiting tire stores with my dad or going even to the beach, right? And he'd have the old green bar reports, that would roll off the dot matrix printer, and he'd have them FedEx to him when he was on vacation.
People can't see the audience in this room; they're too young to know.
He lived in the results, he lived in the reality. And we like to say at Morgan, the numbers don't lie, and that's kind of a lot of conversations, are in and around and begin with the, where we are. And we all know where we are every second of every day in all of our stores.
You hit on something that makes me think of another part of the discussion that was had talking about succession today, the OEM or the manufacturer's input or influence in terms of succession. And I can't remember if it was a panelist or somebody in the audience that was asking the question about kids coming into the business. And there is a big piece that the OEMs and the manufacturers play in the decision process, not just the signage on the store, right?
Yeah. And I think that might even it had influenced my decision to want to be a GM even before I'd run a car store. Was the idea that if I needed to be approved by a manufacturer, I needed a track record of operating a car dealership and not just a resume of all these, various, jobs inside of a car store. And yeah, may have kind of lurched or jumped at that opportunity before I was ready, but you could also argue, when are you ever ready? And I was actually going through the dealer academy when I took this job. So that was kind of hilarious and daunting at the same time. I went from representing our Toyota store, which is very high performing, doing very well. I was like, top of the pop, so to speak, and a lot of benchmarks. And then I go to this Gainesville Buick GMC store that I was running that was losing money and was maybe but that was 08, 09. Things were getting tough. I mean, there were Toyota stores, 12 months later losing money. So those were really tough days.
So we just talked a little bit about, not in this, but in the last statement you made, you were talking about the green bar reports. So that's a generational discussion.
Yes.
Green bar reports, for people that don't know, that are old. I'm old. People listening will know.
I'm old enough to know what a Betamax is too.
Yeah, so we'll let you all Google that and figure out what it is. But as you think about, you've got a daughter that's coming up, very young, but how has having a daughter and your life changed, and how you prioritize who you are as a dealer operator, a son in business with dad, but also running this fantastic enterprise in Florida?
Well, it just, overnight, it kind of feels like the priorities in my life have really changed, and by not design, because they had to, right? So being nearly a single dad, and also, having our business grown as much as it has. Those are two big, powerful forces in my world, and two very positive, powerful forces. So a lot of, extracurriculars, people ask me if I play golf, and I just laugh, like, kind of like Seinfeld, like, who's got the time? Like, really, you have time for this? Like, people who engage me in conversations, sometimes I'm just like, man, that's so funny you even have time to think about that. So my life's gotten very simple, which is good for me. It's been a real positive. And, it's, again, I go back to having those honest conversations. Cause dad's kind of, been more than just understanding about my life. He's made that priority a priority in our business. How do we work around that? How do we make this easier for you? How can you still be a part of this initiative? But, today's your day to go pick up your daughter and do X, Y, and Z. So I think it's brought us closer together in many ways, in that, he knows that I have this tremendous commitment and, want, will, and desire to be a very strong leader in our business, but also that my number one job is to be a good parent. And, I was very blessed. I had a great mom, growing up, who was very involved and provided my father the ability to go and really, commit his life to his work. He was there. Look, no doubt about it. My dad was there, and probably wouldn't have, wanted to be, for anything in his life to be any different. But that took a really strong partner, to raise my sister and I, and to allow him that clear focus. He was very well supported in that regard. My life's just different, and we've recognized that, and we're, I think, working really well together.
I love one of the things that you guys said at the end of the session. We were talking about, you said, you were talking about the partnership and the relationship with your dad, and that byproduct of you working in the car business, and this was no diss to your father.
Yeah.
It was a compliment, I believe.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have the relationship you have with him today if
no,
not.
and shoot, we would have always been close. But when I worked in, radio out of college, I don't think he really understood it. And we didn't talk a lot. I mean, I think we went 6 months, maybe a year, without really talking all that much. If I needed money, I'd go sell CDs or something, because I'd rather do that than have to talk to him. But the reality of life was, we're always going to have a good relationship. He's a great dad, but having this dynamic of working together on a weekly basis, and being able to kind of grow in my own maturity and perspective and understanding and education of our business and him, it's really been kind of fascinating. It's like, kind of having a front row seat to, maybe an existence he's lived a couple times. But yeah, fascinating. I learn from him every day. And doesn't mean we don't challenge each other or differ on issues. He's got this great ability to kind of really fly at both, 40,000 feet and kind of 6 inches off the ground at the same time, in that he's very involved in our businesses, but there's just pieces of our business that bore him to tears, and that he just doesn't have any interest in weighing in on or being involved in. So it's funny, he'll walk out of a lot of meetings, well, you guys figure that out. And I love that. I love that, because it's really about the orchestration and the people quality and the development, and a lot of his skill set as it relates to acquisition. And it's awesome to be able to watch.
So key themes I took from the panel discussion today, as it relates from the generational perspective: communication is key.
Yeah, communication, self-awareness, emotional maturity. And I think, kind of understanding that those things are going to sit in different places at different, points in your life. When you're a young person, you just want to, prove to the world that, and you want your cup filled, and you want to be validated, and you want to feel like, and that becomes less important as you get older. But I think, a parent of somebody getting into the business needs to understand that. I mean, there were days, I did work those bell to bells, and I did, run a GMC store through the Pontiac wind down and through Cash for Clunkers. And, I can remember staying up till like 2, 3 in the morning, and almost to the point it's not really good for your health. And why? What am I trying to prove? And I had to let go of some of that as a young leader and as someone trying to grow in the business. So yes, just a lot of self-honesty and communication. And really, I'm so lucky. My father is such a humble person, and he doesn't necessarily go to work for his own success. It's about watching other people succeed. I think I joked one time, I'm like, he's put more people on than Jay-Z has. Like, he's just he's made a lot of people find different levels of success in their life I don't think they could have found on their own. And to him, that's it. That's why he gets up every morning. Um, he's kind of gamified his life a long time ago, where that's the quest for success is not just his success. It's the success that other people can find in being their best.
Well, you've got a pretty amazing dad. I haven't had many interactions with him, but the ones I have, especially leading up to this event, I was impressed that he was even communicating on your behalf as to when you guys would be here or when you would attend. So I'm like, I'm getting an email from Larry Morgan on behalf of him and his son about the event. This is amazing. He cares.
He does care. And I told him, he had a couple things falling into his world, and I was like, look, I can hold down the fort without you. No, but I think it was great that we were both able to be here, and you got different perspectives, even though we've lived the same existence. And yeah, I am lucky.
Well, we are super grateful for you guys being here. I know it's an immense amount of time, but I think the subject matter hit home with a lot of our attendees. By product of doing this, I'm hoping more of this will hit dealers that weren't able to come today. To that point, I would ask you, what are 3 takeaways? And they don't have to be all business related, but 3 takeaways that you would give to a dealer sitting in your shoes right now that if you could send them messages, what would it be?
Yeah, I think about the context of my own daughter, right? So you've got this, in a dealership, you've got a wealth generating, asset that are hard to come by, right? It's hard to get into the automotive business. We talked about getting the OEM approval from Toyota with our first store. And even though Larry had this incredible acumen and resume of his past life in a related business, it wasn't like a slam dunk. It was never anything that we took for granted. So, I would kind of say, understand the opportunity that you have. Don't be afraid to, allow your children to enjoy and relish opportunities that others don't, because there's always a flip side. You allow a kid, like I said, my dad put me to work when I was 12, maybe not legally. But those, that opportunity really shaped me, to kind of who I am. Secondly, it was interesting to see, kind of, all 3 of the patriarchs, if you will, of their families kind of struggle with the conversation of when's the right time to kind of get out of the way. One kind of talk like he already had, one kind of, talk like he still was struggling with it. And then you have my dad, who years ago, I just looked at him and I said, why do you even ask me when's the right time for you to go away? Like that would provide you 0 joy. I'd lose out on continued education and opportunity and bandwidth in our business. Like just be honest. Just let's say you're not going anywhere, right? Until you physically or mentally can't handle the work anymore, because he loves what he does. So again, I mean, self-honesty, I guess, again.
You made the statement that he can be in the room as long as he's making sense.
Yeah, as long as he's making sense, again, as long as he physically can get in the chair and mentally is sharp. Because I think
don't know if you were watching him.
I think for some people, they degrade quickly when they don't have, that mission every day. And he's sharp as, we won't say his age.
Well, I don't know if you were watching him when you were responding, but he was shaking his head in agreement with you that as long as he's in the room making sense, he was good with that.
He just brings a perspective to the table that, will be so sorely missed, can't be replaced. A third point that I learned from today, I think, just having these conversations early and often, and on the estate planning side, I think Dad said it when he sold Tires Plus, that kind of spawned a lot of, some layer of estate planning that really didn't exist in the past. And that kind of transferred over to what we were doing in automotive. and we'll parlay it to, I have a twin sister who's not in the business, and, I love that for her. So I would say that, from a uniformity perspective, I love that she shares in the future benefit as a future, as a successive shareholder in our business. And I do not begrudge her one bit that she doesn't want to be involved, so like a clarity of operation. I think that's probably better for us, that we don't have somebody involved in our business who would want to be doing something else. But on the other side, as a family, we talk weekly, and, she's very supportive, because she's a future, shareholder. So I would say, from a family element, don't define a family business by people that just want to be, operational or have a job in that business. I look at my life as twofold. I'm an employee of the company, kind of first and foremost, and then I'm also the son of Larry and, a successor in the business. And there was a great point today somebody made about clarity and kind of mission and values and, vision,
Setting the
where
mission,
you're
the
going.
value.
And
Yep.
we've got some, certainly written, but they're verbalized on a daily basis, kind of the who we are, where we're going, what we want and why we want it. I think that's super important, super important. Any business, not just a family business. But if that's something that I can champion moving forward, even in the absence of dad, wow, right? Because that's kind of a big part of his legacy.
Mm-hmm. Another thing your dad hit on that makes you guys, from a family perspective, successful is every Thursday you're getting together and having family financial meetings.
Yeah. And a lot of that's, about some of these kind of hard conversations that we talked about today, the fact that, death taxes in our country, they've put, fellow, dealers in a position to have to sell off, really, really good assets, to cover that. And, you can employ some strategy involved in estate planning and just making sure that the family understands that. And then also, we didn't talk about it a ton today, but having an equity partner has allowed us to take some, I say us, dad, to take some capital out of the business. And dad's been great about, making sure we're a part of all those decisions. And it's kind of not our money, but we get to treat it, it's maybe our money someday. But he lets us have a say in that direction. So we almost have kind of like a family office, as well, if you will. And again, there's only me and my sister, so we're kind of blessed. And my brother-in-law's, heavily involved, and there's not a ton of bodies, which is maybe, again, something I'd appreciate. If I had 12 brothers and sisters, it might be
a little bit harder.
Yeah, it might be. I can empathize with how that would be tough.
Well, it was an interesting conversation. I've been in this industry the majority of my career, and I thought the conversations today in the session were raw and live. We got some great questions from some of the attendees. And another one of our panelists, Joe Laham with Premier Companies, made a great point at the end too, saying all of us need to be talking more about this. So I appreciate you and your dad coming. Haig Partners, of course, very much appreciates you coming and telling the story. To leave on a positive note, I have a burning question, and this is just for selfish interest. If you had to say you are a car, what car would it be?
Oh, that's really tough. You're going to ask a car guy that question?
Yep.
That's really, really tough.
And so everybody listening knows I didn't tee this up to him at all.
This is just way too hard a question to ask a car guy, right? Because if I say like an Aston Martin DBS, then you're like, man, this guy's pretentious and he's a snob and he's, silver spoon kid. If I say I'm a Volkswagen bus, then you're wondering how I spent my college days. What kind of car am I? This is a really good question.
I have stumped Brett Morgan.
Yeah, I don't think he'd stump me. I would say I'm a Toyota 4Runner. Because that was the first new car I ever had in my life, even before we were in the Toyota business. And it was dependable, but, off-road capability. It looked great.
Was it like the first gen? Like the original body style?
Second or third gen. It was a 99. Yeah. So it was, and it was maybe the only thing wrong with it. It was like the motor was a little underpowered.
So I'd say and
it had lots of utility. That power rear window, Like, I don't know how many moves I made. I didn't have to call U-Haul because I would just have couches like hanging out of that 4Runner.
So
lots of utility.
Dependable. And I would go as far to say as well, it is the one SUV that other manufacturers have always tried to emulate.
Yeah. And it sits out there on its own, you know? It really does. It's like on the Tacoma platform, but not, you know what I mean? It's like that's what I am. I'm a 4Runner.
Well, you heard it here first, everybody. Brett Morgan is a 4Runner. Brett, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being here today. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with the audience?
It was really powerful just to see the belief that some of these fathers had in their children. And I think that, you know, even before somebody's arrived or is a fully developed product in life, belief is so powerful. And I say that with the context of thinking out, you know, how I deal with my own daughter and making sure that
don't be sorry.
That she knows she can, you know, she's capable, whatever she wants.
Well, thank you for that. I think your daughter is going to do just fine because she's got Brett as a dad, Larry as a granddad, and this incredible industry around her that's going to do nothing but support her and lift her up.
Well,
if she decides to join it.
Let's hope so.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.